Thank you there, Victor. You the man. And let's see here. Okay, so we're going.
Just real quick before you get started, have you heard from Mark?
Nope, haven't heard from Mark either. But Mark comes and goes, you know. So, but definitely worth maybe even contacting him, make sure everything's okay on his end too. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're still in Hebrews 11. Remember, I've called this this chapter is called like the wall of faith, or it's about what faith is all about. And I think that the Jews in that time, and that's why the writer of Hebrews is bringing this about, is that he needed them to understand that their religion hadn't really always been just about works, just about keeping the law, just about, focusing on what to do and what not to do. But that really their belief stemmed all the way back, even to Cain and Abel, and that each of those people that are brought up in this chapter, the Faith Hall of Fame, so to speak, are actually had a relationship with God. And the stronger their faith, the stronger their relationship with God, and their faith would be counted to them as righteousness. So, I mean, the people of the Old Testament didn't actually make a heart commitment, so to speak, like we do. If you know how in Romans 10 it says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved, right? Well, they didn't have something that very specifically said, okay, hey, that's the way that you need to open your heart to make Jesus Christ Lord of your life. Back then, God was God. Well, he always is God. So God is God. But in that time, what would happen is the more they trusted God, and I'm going to use kind of faith and trust interchangeably, because the more they trusted God, in spite of the fact that maybe they didn't see him, that was counted to them as righteousness, because they would continue to worship God. And we'll be talking about Abraham today. And to me, he really is a model of faith. Because, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, he came up from Ur of the Chaldees with his family, because his father had brought him up. That was down, if you think about Ur of the Chaldees, that's probably where the Jews had been taken into captivity, but later, down into that area. That's where Babylon, down in that area. It's just above what we know as the Persian Gulf, that's been renamed the Arabian Gulf now. It's, where Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia kind of all go around that area. Well, it's at the north part of what would have been the Persian Gulf. So that's the area of Ur of the Chaldees that they would have come out of. And then they moved north up into almost what would be considered southeastern Turkey. And that's where Abraham was at when his father died. And that's where God talked to him, said, okay, go to Canaan. So we'll talk about that. We'll look about how that all worked out, and how God works in mysterious ways, but when you obey him, that pleases him. When you trust him, that pleases him. And those things put together make your faith in him, even though you don't see him. Back then, of course, for those that we've talked about up to this point, up to verse 8, and even in verse 8, they didn't have a Bible yet. They didn't have scriptures yet. They didn't have the Torah, the law, yet. That came about in Moses' time frame. And even then, when Moses was older, he was 80 some odd years old when God gave the law to him on Mount Sinai, to them, to the Israelis, the Jews. So as we look at that, and as we look at what was going on in their lives, we'll take a look and see what was going on. So, I mean, now, in that day, God would actually talk to some of those people. Okay, we see that somehow God would talk to them, God would reveal himself to them, and that that was more than what we see today. I mean, because if you remember, even with Abraham, there were 3 strangers that came to visit Abraham, right? And when they visited him, one of them was the pre-incarnate Christ, and the other 2 were angels that had come. But Abraham recognized them. And when he said, stay with me, let me get you food and all that, they said, okay, we'll hang, you know. And so they ended up, you know, eating together. And that's where Jesus, Abraham talked to the pre-incarnate Christ and, you know, asked him, hey, what can we arrange here so that you won't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? You know, and he started saying, what if you find so many righteous people there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality was there were none righteous there. And the question is, was even Lot, you know, righteous? But we'll see if Lot was righteous in our chapter here as we study. So any questions about where we are and why the writer of Hebrews is trying to get the Jews on track with the fact that faith is something that they really have always had all along, even though they may not have realized it. And he's painting the picture of how this faith works. Okay, good. So let me see here. Just putting down who we've got here. We got Aaron, Donna, let's see, Sally. Hey, Sally.
Hello, I'm cooking. That's why I've shut myself out of all the video and sounds.
Let's see. Hey, Ted's even here. How did Ted get here? Okay, so let's go ahead and pray, and we'll jump into verse 8 right away. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for an opportunity to get together as the body of Christ to study your word. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you would open up our hearts and minds and let your Holy Spirit reveal to us the wonder of your word, and let us come to grips with how essential faith is, and that it is central to our walk with you. It is central to our trusting and obeying you. Because even though we don't see you, we trust you, and we obey what you have given us in your word and what you reveal to us through our other brothers and sisters. So, Lord, help us to understand this in a way that puts it into practice in the best way that brings you honor and glory in all things. And open our eyes to the truths that you have for us. We love you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, let me go ahead and move over to our screen here and take a look-see at what it is that we're going to be looking at. Now in chapter 11, verse 8, we're picking up at verse 8. We've already talked about Cain and Abel, right? Well, in this case, Cain, you know, Abel offered a better sacrifice than Cain, so we saw that. So Abel was the one that got, you know, the faith check mark there. Enoch got the faith check mark. Noah got the faith check mark. And now we're down to Abraham. But I think the key verse, and what we have to understand in verse 6, is that this is something that has applied from the beginning of time, since the beginning of creation, is what it says in verse 6. It says, now without faith, it is impossible to please God. Faith is essential. Faith is part of our relationship with God, and it is a crucial piece. You know, of course, we have to love God, but if we don't have faith that there is a God, then what do we have to love? You see the issue? So faith is that foundation on what that we build on, that we do have a God, and that he is a loving and caring God and cares for us. And so that's why faith is imperative in our walk with the Lord. If we don't have faith, guess what you're going to look at? You're going to look at things that you can trust with your own senses, with your own eyes, with your own feeling. And that's what you're going to start believing in. And that's what most religions in the world are all about. You don't really see that there are any religions out there that, somebody in the waiting room. You don't see any religions out there that really work on faith per se. They've always built off of a person, and they build off of certain works. They build off of a system. But one of the things we mentioned before is that, well, wait a minute, what about an atheist? They require more faith than do others, but it's a misplaced faith, because there is no value in what they believe in, because they can't substantiate it. So we can substantiate it, and some may say, yeah, but you can't prove it. Well, that's a matter of perspective. We can prove that we have a God, because God does a lot of the things that he says in his word today. And we do see healings. We do see miracles from the Lord even today. Not as abundantly as maybe when Jesus was walking the earth, but they are there. And so, but what you find today, most people say, oh, that was just a coincidence, or that was just, it wasn't really a miracle. It was really science that did it. Or you can do it again. If you do it again, then I'll believe you. It's like, so they don't have faith. They just want some type of proof. But then again, that's what the Pharisees wanted too, wasn't it? Just do another sign, or give us a sign. Well, Jesus had been giving signs. He had shown that he was Jesus Christ, the Messiah. But yet they didn't believe him then either. See, the Pharisees had no faith. They wanted signs, they wanted things their way, and they didn't want God getting in the way of their belief in God. Kind of crazy, isn't it? But that was the reality of what they were dealing with. And it was sad, because they were missing the wonder. So that's why it says, now without faith, it's impossible to please God. And you say, well, what is faith? And you go up to verse 1. It is a reality, what is hoped for, and the proof of what is not seen. So in other words, we accept it even though our senses don't tell us it's there. Our hearts tell us it's there, and God's word tells us it's there. And for us, that's good enough. That's our faith. Okay? More blessed are those who have not seen and believe, is what Jesus told Thomas. Remember that when Thomas, I think we kind of cut Thomas. We don't give him enough slack, but, we always say that he was doubting Thomas. But, I think Thomas was just human like we are. A lot of people are that way today. If you don't show me, I'm not going to believe, right? So that's what we're talking about here. That's why faith is essential. And you say, well, why is the writer of Hebrews telling the Jews about this? Well, he's trying to set out that, hey, faith has demonstrated that it was part of who we are as Jews all the way back. Even though our lineage technically didn't start till Abraham, it actually goes back even further. And that people believe God through faith. And that was what was counted to them as righteousness. So let's look at verse 8. So that's why he's building on this, because what he's doing is he's building so that they can understand how to have faith in Jesus Christ, that it isn't something new, it's just something that needs to continue on. So he says in verse 8, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed, and set out for a place that he was going to receive as his inheritance. He went out, even though he did not know where he was going. And that's in Genesis 12, as you can see there, 1 through 4. And this is what Jesus said in Genesis 12 to him. He said, somebody's chatting me up here. Oh, probably the rest of the disciples would have doubted also if they hadn't been there. Oh, that's possible, Sally. Yeah, you're right. Because the disciples had trouble in believing everything. Jesus had to keep telling them, oh, ye of little faith, right? Come on, guys. So look what the Lord said to Abraham. Go from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. That was going to be Canaan, okay? And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Now, Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. Haran was at the north side of, remember I was telling you about that on the southeast side of Turkey? Well, Haran, I don't know if you can see this map. Is it too small for you guys to see? But Haran is right where the pointer is at. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Hang on. I don't know. Hang on. I think I can. Isn't that what the little engine said? Let me see if I can make it bigger.
I think I can.
I guess, the map, the text gets bigger, but the map didn't get too much bigger. But Haran is right up here, almost even up with where Turkey cuts, the south part of Turkey cuts across. So it would have been in what is Syria today, northern Syria. That's where Haran is. But Ur of the Chaldees would have been way down around where Babylon was at. That's where they had come up with when they settled at Haran. Well, that's where God spoke to him originally. But I think it's beautiful that, I mean, Abraham didn't ask any questions. All he did was in verse 5 in Genesis 12, he says, he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all his possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Hey, he didn't ask any questions. He just said, well, God's telling me to do this. I guess I better go. And I mean, to me, that was a real significant step of faith for him to jump out there and say, yeah, I'll do it no matter what. And he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, he didn't have anything, that he could say, yeah, okay, hey, God's given me this and this and this. So, and a lot of the other people that God approached, they always wanted signs. Look at Gideon. Didn't Gideon want signs? Remember? Oh, make the fleece wet and make the ground dry, or make the ground wet and the fleece dry. I mean, a lot of times people wanted some kind of proof that it really was God. But in the case of Abraham, he just set out and did exactly what he is. And so that obedience showed his faith in God. And so what we're looking at is that as he set out for a place he was going to receive an inheritance, he went out even though he did not know where he was going. God just told him, go to this land that I'm going to show you. And look in verse 9. He says, by faith, he stayed as a foreigner in the land of promise, living in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. So in other words, as he's obeying God, he's realizing, hey, there's a bigger picture, a bigger thing coming on the horizon. And see, the writer of Hebrews is talking about this because it's pointing to Jesus. It's pointing to the Messiah. But yet the Jews weren't accepting that. They weren't saying, yeah, that's great. That's exactly what we're looking for. They were pretty much pushing this aside, saying this has no bearing. It has nothing to do with that. But in other words, the writer of Hebrews is telling them, yes, I mean, that was God's plan all along, and Abraham is crucial in this step that God is taking in his plan throughout all the generations. And yet, you see how you say you're sons of Abraham. You see how Abraham obeyed, but you guys won't obey. You guys don't trust, but Abraham did trust God. So come on, people. You need to come out of that, and you need to be aware that, hey, our God has a plan for us, and he's had a plan all the way back from the Garden of Eden. And so it's about having faith and obeying God and trusting that what he wants is best for all of us. Notice he brings up his two children, right? Isaac was his child. It was Abraham's child. He was the son of promise, right? The other one was who? because he had another child, the one that they kind of tried to help God with. What was his name?
Ishmael.
Ishmael, right. And he's the father of the Arabs. And so we see that they tried to force, the promise. And so Abraham just kind of played along. And unfortunately, that wasn't God's plan. God's plan was that Sarah was going to have the son of promise. And she did. But she got in a hurry and she talked, Abraham into it. And so Abraham ended up going in with his concubine, basically with Sarah's servant that became his concubine, and had that child. So that wasn't God's plan. But notice what happens when we end up, trying to help God out. A lot of times we end up messing up, don't we? We just need to wait on the Lord, even when it seems impossible. Because I tell you, with Sarah being 90 and Abraham being 100, it didn't seem like there was going to be any way that either of those could have a child, right?
That's real faith.
That's real faith. I'm telling you, because from a human perspective, even they who didn't have an advanced science or an obstetrics kind of program, they already knew, hey, people at this age just don't have children, period.
Right.
So, but God had a better plan, didn't he? So we see then that Isaac was birthed, when they were old. As a matter of fact, it says while they were even like yet dead. As a matter of fact, we'll get into that in 11. But then Isaac had Jacob. So Jacob would have been the grandchild of Abraham and Sarah. So they became co-heirs of the same promise that, Abraham had received. But I think the beauty is in verse 10. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. It's God's plan. That's what he's talking about here. It is looking forward to God's plan and the way he has, and this is a metaphor, the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. It's God's plan that matters. And it's God's plans that brings everything to bear. And God's plan was to send his son. And he would be the Redeemer, right? So look at verse 11. By faith, even Sarah herself, when she was unable to have children, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past the age, since she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. Now, I kind of have to chuckle at the way the writer of Hebrews brings this in here, and Donna was kind of talking about it earlier, is that a lot of times you look at the people who ended up having the faith and doing these things, but when you go back and read, you find out Sarah wasn't, this stalwart, faithful person. She's the one that forced Abraham to have relations with her servant so that they could have the child, right? And then she couldn't even get along with the servant after that, because the servant, she was dogging Sarah because, man, because now Sarah didn't have the child, but the servant did. So she was trying to say she was better than Sarah. So Sarah wanted Abraham to kick her out. And eventually she got him to kick her out. But then God said, no, you got to go back. So, and submit yourself to your mistress, Sarah. So, okay. Now, I see that, let's see here. Ivan and, let's see here. Hang on just a second here. And Julie. Julie's asking a question. She says, why did people live longer in those days? Well, that goes back to the time before the flood. Okay, when God created everybody, remember, man and woman were going to live forever. Okay, that was God's plan. They were going to live forever, and we would have never died. If we had been without sin, if we hadn't sinned in the garden, when I say we, Adam and Eve, had not sinned in the garden, we would have all lived forever. okay, with God. But we did sin, and that brought sin into the world. And with sin came death. Now, before the flood, God had the world covered and with a special protective layer of water that was around the whole earth. Who knows how deep it was up there, or how thick it was, I guess you would say. But it filtered out a lot of the harmful rays from the sun. And God, in other words, God made this the perfect place to live. Okay. And that remained in place all the way till Noah. And people lived in that time because of the way the world was created. Even though death had come on man at that point, they lived longer because the environment was suitable for the body not to break down. And so up to the time of the flood, people were living mostly into their 900 years. Okay, very close to 1,000 in some cases. Methuselah lived, what, 969 years of those documented that were living in that time frame. And no women were documented in terms of age. So who knows? Maybe women might have lived longer. Who knows? But what you find is that they were living in their 900s, mostly. There were a few 800s in there, you know, that died way early. But then, once the flood happened, that canopy that surrounded the earth of water broke free. And also the springs under the earth broke free. All that water ended up coming to bear. That when that canopy broke from heaven, all that water came down onto the earth. And that's what caused, between that and the springs breaking free from under the earth, caused the flood. Now, without that protective shield around the earth, now harmful rays were coming in. Remember, man was always destined to die anyway. And so things that we are dealing with now that break down the body faster started happening then. Even though Noah was in his 900s when he died, what you see is that as each generation came, they were losing 100 to 200 years of age. So it didn't take very many generations for them to come down into living just under 100 years. But Abraham was of one of those generations where he was still living a bit longer than what we live today. And I think Abraham lived about 150 years. Okay. So some would say, well, that was because God let him live 150 years. Well, yeah, true. But actually, most of the people were living about that long at that time. The generation before him may have been living around 200 years. And the generation before that may be around 300 years. So they were falling off as the bodies were being bombarded by more things that were causing it to break down quicker. Donna says, didn't the earth go slightly off its axis from the flood as well? I believe so. I think the earth was in a perfect position before the flood. And that was another thing that also helped, you know, keep the, I guess, the environment proper for long life. When
yeah,
it went,
I'm thinking that there was like a it was like a terrarium. There was like a veil over the earth of some sort, like not a dome, but you know, like a atmospheric dome
shield.
or whatever.
Yeah,
that when he did the flood, the earth, and he caused the earth. I mean, this is just my own, what I see it as. Okay, I'm not saying
right.
this is fact, but what I saw it as is that that he caused the earth to kind of go off its axis. And when that happened, it caused everything to break, you know, kind of like if you drop a piece of glass, you know, the whole thing shatters, you know.
Right.
But when that happened, it caused that atmospheric thing to break and everything else. And being off its axis maybe could have caused everything else to be out of whack from what it was before. Does that make sense?
You have to understand that by knocking off its axis too, remember in Genesis 9, it talks about then there were seasons. See, there were no seasons before that.
Right.
Everything was just perfect. But with the earth off axis, now all of a sudden there were seasons. There's, you know, summer, spring, autumn, and winter. Before that, there wasn't any of that. See, and that's another thing that caused more problems in terms of people dying. You know, people die of freezing now, and people
Right.
had, you know, dealt with floods, not a flood that would cover the whole earth again, because God said he wouldn't do that again,
Right.
but flooding was there. And all
Mhm.
these weather patterns came out of
Right.
all of that. The weather patterns we have today, these hurricanes and everything, they didn't have any of those before the flood.
Right. So when it flipped off its axis and knocked that shield away, like
Yep.
you said,
Yep.
then it caused all the rest of the stuff, you know, to
Exactly. It's all part of the curse,
right.
folks. It's
So
all
that's all
part of
kind of
sin.
an atmospheric thing that we get from, you know, I don't know, just that's what I always thought, that when it fell off its axis, that's what caused it to, you know,
Yeah.
basically, you know, all those ruptures that came up from the underneath, like you said, and everything. That's, you know, why I was asking about that.
But that's,
Okay,
you know, that's how God did it. It was all part of the curse. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's what we had to deal with because we sinned against God. And he made it clear that if we sinned, we were
Mhm.
surely going to die.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're dealing with even today. We're still
Mhm.
dealing with the fact that, you know, this fall has caused a problem in all of creation. And that's what we're
Mhm.
dealing with. But what the writer of Hebrews is saying, we still keep our eyes on the Lord by faith in the midst of all of this, because we still
Mhm.
trust him to be there for us in all things. So we see, I hope that answered your question, Julie, by the way. So that's why people don't live as long today as they did back then. All of creation has changed in that respect. And it's not as conducive to long life like it was back then before the flood. That's why we have degraded in terms of how long we live today. But yet, at Abraham's time, they were still living longer. As a matter of fact, Job was believed to be before Abraham. And if you calculate out about how long he would have lived, since he lived through two families, basically, it looked like he would have been living around 200 years. Okay, so he would have lived a little longer than Abraham. So maybe he was a generation before Abraham, for instance. And, you know, that's a possibility. So it's worth, you know, just kind of, yeah.
I can't imagine how a human body could live that long unless it was just by God.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, 200 years, 300 years.
Yeah, and look at with all our advanced science today, Sherry. I mean, we still can't make people live longer. We can say, well, we might be able to extend your specific life 10 years or 15 years, but that doesn't mean, you know, maybe you would have died at 60, so instead maybe you die at 70 to 75 instead, you know, but that's still not 150. It's still not 200. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I think the oldest person on earth right now is like 112 or something, or 110, something like that. But I mean, they're not going to be around. We know no matter what, they're not going to be around much longer.
Too?
What's that?
But what quality of life do they have at that age
Yeah,
too?
I don't.
mean,
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
all, you know, like Joshua, he was 80 years old when he went in and conquered the promised land. You don't see any 80-year-olds doing that kind of stuff today. So it's not.
Caleb too.
Even
Yeah,
when you're living
Caleb
that
did the
long,
same.
you're not.
Exactly.
It says online the oldest person is 117.
117.
And that French woman passed away at 122.
Woo,
in 1997.
I don't want to live that long. I really
well, that's the other issue. Who wants to live that long, right?
I want to be with Jesus, where I have my glorified body, and I don't have all these aches and pains and stuff. You know, I mean.
Exactly. So
you're not getting older. You just need more maintenance.
that's a fact. So what we see is that, I mean, God really worked through Abraham and Sarah. And even though Sarah had her problems, if we go back and read about, you know, I mean, she was a high maintenance woman to some extent. But one of the things that just kind of tickles me is that the way, you know, the writer of Hebrews puts it, says, by faith, even Sarah herself, when she wasn't able to have children, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past age, and she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. Well, when you read that, actually, she actually had her doubts. She was, to me, Sarah was very human, okay? And she is like, hey, come on, you know, I don't have any children yet. And back then, it was almost a curse that if you didn't have children, because it was considered God was blessing you to have children. And if you didn't have any, well, then you were cursed. So I think Sarah was really bummed out, okay? But we see that God still worked his plan even so. And so in verse 12, therefore from one man, in fact, from one as good as dead, because, hey, Abraham was way beyond reproducing, right? He was far gone. Came offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky, as innumerable as the grains of the sand along the seashore. Well, that's what God had promised him, that he would be the father of many nations, and that he would have children. He'd have all kinds of children. That's why God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, instead of, you know, basically a father, but a father of many nations. And so we see that Abraham obeyed God, even in difficult times, even in situations that looked like they were just too bleak to really trust God. Abraham continued to trust God in the midst of all of that. So, as a matter of fact, did you know that the Bible says that we, those who have come into Christ, are part of are in Abraham's family? Pretty cool, isn't it? And also, did you know that after Sarah died, Abraham married Keturah and had like 6 or 7 sons with her? I mean, we never
And he
hear.
was over 100, wasn't he? He was like 120 years old when he
Yeah,
fathered all those kids, right?
Yeah, he was. It was so. I mean, whatever Viagra God gave him really worked big time. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean,
that was before Viagra.
oh, well, that's what I'm saying. It was a God Viagra thing. So, well, whatever he did, yeah, he stayed strong and was able to have like 6 or 7 children. We don't know whatever came or what came from those children. We just know that he had them. And so, but they weren't in the lineal promise, just like Ishmael was not in the lineal promise. But yet Ishmael was blessed by God, because that's what he told the servant. He told her, hey, look, he'll be blessed and he will be the father of 12 princes. So, and if you look at the Arabic thing, they go by that, you know, the 12 princes in the Arabic realm. So I mean, Ishmael was blessed by God, but he was not the son of promise. Isaac was. So we see that even then, God blessed Abraham for his faith. And so, but I like the fact that it says, therefore, from one man, that's Abraham, in fact, from one as good as dead, walking dead, right, came offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky, as innumerable as the grains of sand along the seashore. And that was part of the Abrahamic covenant, that's what he was going to give him. God told Abraham that. And so God carried out his promise in accordance with what he said he would do. So, I mean, I think that's beautiful. You know, now, Abraham, I mean, one of the things that he doesn't talk about here was some of the things that he did while he was around. Look how he went and rescued Lot, you know, from being kidnapped. Remember when Sodom and Gomorrah had been overrun by these 5 kings and taken away? Abraham took his 400 men and they went and rescued Lot and everybody else, you know, that had been taken from Lot's family and all the goods. And as a matter of fact, brought back a lot of people. But Abraham said, I'm not going to take any reward from you guys, you know, just whatever my men ate or whatever, that's all. And so we see that God was always with him. And in every situation, God took care of him. And I mean, he did some pretty great things. And the thing was, is you really saw that Abraham was a meek guy. Because when he and Lot's men were having trouble fighting with each other, and Lot said, hey, look, we shouldn't be fighting one with another, he and his nephew Lot. You know, in other words, hey, isn't the land all ours? Hasn't God given it to us? Wherever you go, I'll go the other way. And so, of course, Lot looked down and saw that the Jordan was fertile. He says, that's where I'm going to go. And so that's where he took, you know, his men. And Abraham said, I'll be over on this side then. You know, Abraham was, you know, very meek in that respect. He didn't say, hey, I'm the older, you're supposed to do, I get first pick, and then you get what's left. No, he let him pick first. And I think Lot kind of messed up, because where did he end up living? Down in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The place of evil that God hated and destroyed, even the, you know, but God was able to save Lot and his family until his wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. So anyway, I'm sure the animals licked her up before it was all done. So there is no salt, Lot's wife out there. You know, if somebody says we found it, nah, it's gone. So I mean, we see that Abraham truly trusted God. To me, I think Abraham is probably one of the most seminal faith icons in the Old Testament. I mean, to me, I never saw him ask God questions. Even when God told him to take Isaac and go sacrifice him, he never turned around and asked God, well, what? Are you sure? Wait. Didn't you give him to me as the son of promise? Now, the thing, Abraham trusted God no matter what God asked him to do. And I think that's the beauty of faith, is when we just obey God and say, yes, Lord, kind of like Isaiah said in chapter 6 of Isaiah, where God commissioned him. And eventually he said, here am I, Lord, send me. And I think that's beautiful. You know what I mean? So any questions about Abraham and Sarah? Okay.
Comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
You were saying, I think it's funny, you saying he trusted God with his son, but he didn't trust God with his wife.
He obeyed his wife.
Told him that she's my sister, you know.
Right.
Maybe he learned his lesson by the time Isaac came along, that he needed to just, no matter what, trust God.
Yeah. Well, I think Abraham was a peacemaker, and he just didn't want to stir the pot. So I think whenever Sarah would tell him to do something, he just did it, you know.
So you think it was Sarah's idea to say, you're my sister? I don't think so.
Oh no, when it was to have the child,
Yeah.
Ishmael. Yeah, that was Sarah's idea. But no, not about the sister thing. That was Abraham. Yeah, you're right.
But one other thing I always wondered is, I wonder if Sarah actually knew that he was going to take Isaac out. And I can't imagine a mother going, sure, honey, go ahead and take our only.
I don't see anywhere that he told her what God had told him. He just went. Yeah, he just went.
Think about weird stuff like that. I mean, I don't know why, but I always think about stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, I wouldn't have told her. You know, I would have kept my mouth shut.
Telling his wife, like Aaron, I know you're married. Could you imagine telling your wife you're going to take your kid down and sacrifice her? No.
Well, probably not.
Probably
I don't think they knew what they were going to have to do, the test, did they? He just said to go, and then he didn't tell them to
he said
start to kill him until they got out to the top of the hill or wherever they were, right?
Oh no, he said, take your son and offer a sacrifice to me.
So he did know before he left.
He did know before he left.
That.
Yes. That's why I wouldn't have told Sarah if I was him, you know.
Yeah, if he didn't want to stir the pot, well, that would have turned it upside down for sure.
But if you remember, once they left, the other people, you know, because he took several people with him, right? It wasn't just he and Isaac. But when he told the other people to stay behind, that he and Isaac were going to go up on the hill, do you remember Isaac asked Abraham,
Where's
Father,
the sacrifice?
Where is the sacrifice? Right?
And he said, God will provide it.
God will provide. That's right. So Abraham had faith that God was going to do his work in the midst of it. But since God hadn't provided it, guess what? He put Isaac on the altar after it had been prepared, and took out his knife, and he was ready to come down on him with the knife. In other words, he was in the act when the angel stopped him and say, don't hurt the son. Don't hurt your son, your only son. And that's when it says he looked in the thicket and there was a ram stuck there. And he said, use the ram instead. So, I mean, Abraham was going to go through with it. And that's what pleased God, is that he did not waver in his faith. That's faith, Yeah. So anyway, we get up to that point. We see Abraham and Abraham and Sarah. And I'll tell you, it's a great story. But then we get into verse 13. Hey, guess what? They all died. But they died in faith. Okay, so it says, these all died in faith, although they had not received the things that were promised. In other words, Abraham had the covenant, right? God made big promises to Abraham. God made promises to Noah in the Noahic covenant. God made promises to Adam in the Adamic covenant. And we see all this, but they died not really seeing God fully fulfill those promises that he had made to them. And so that's why he's saying they died in faith, expecting that God was still going to carry out the promises, even though they were gone. And that's good faith, because God will always do what he says he's going to do. But they saw them from a distance. In other words, he's talking about distance in time, not a distance in actual miles. But he's talking about they saw it from a distance. In other words, before they actually happened, greeted them and confessed that they were foreigners and temporary residents on the earth. So in other words, they knew that we're just here for a short time, and God's plan is going to take longer than what my life here on this earth will be. But I know God will carry out what he says he'll do. And that's what they're talking about. And that's what the writer of Hebrews talked about, that, and greeted them. In other words, greeted means they accept the fact that God was going to carry them out, and confessed meaning it's trusting God that they were foreigners and temporary residents on the earth. They trusted God that in their short period of time, they may not see the promises God had provided, but they knew he was going to carry them out. So that's why the writer of Hebrews is saying, hey, by faith, they didn't look at death as being what stopped anything. They looked at death as just an issue that humans have to deal with, but it doesn't change God's plan to carry out what he says he'll do. So in verse 14, now those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. Well, in that time, the homeland, they knew that there was something beyond this earth. And that what was beyond this earth, that's what the writer of Hebrews is calling a homeland. In that time frame, the righteous, those that died in faith, that the writer of Hebrews is talking about, went to paradise. Okay, they were the righteous. Now, paradise isn't heaven. It was like a staging place awaiting the promise. Okay, now, remember up here where he says that even though they saw him from a distance, greeted and confessed that they were foreigners, residents of the earth, and that all these died in faith, that they had received things that were promised. Well, that's what paradise would have been. Paradise would have been a holding place for them to see what God had promised that would be carried out. Because when Jesus died, he went to paradise. That was one of the places he went in his death, and he took all those in paradise, the righteous. That's when their sin was actually forgiven, was then and there. Everything else was pointing forward to that event. But once Jesus died, he died for sin past, present, and future. That cleared all those righteous people that were in paradise, and he took them to heaven with him. Paradise ceased to be at that point in time. There is no more paradise. But we see that paradise was active all the way up while even Jesus was on the cross. Because remember the other thief on the cross that says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you will be with me, not in heaven, but in paradise. So in other words, when that thief died, he died the righteous death and went to paradise, just like all the forefathers had. But yet his stay was very, very short, because he went to paradise, but then Jesus took all those in paradise up to heaven with him. So that now that thief is in heaven with the Lord. His sins are forgiven. And I know we use him a lot as an example, as like, wow, you mean he went to go be with the Lord even though he was just saved that nanosecond while he was on the cross, but he did nothing? That goes to show you can't earn salvation. Salvation is a matter of faith and trust in the Lord. It's not about earning it. It's not about works. It's about coming into relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's what's important, is that you come into relationship with Jesus Christ and walk with him. That's the faith that all of these people from old would have been looking forward to, and they would have been holding on to while they were in paradise waiting for it to happen. So it says, so they see all these things happening, and it says, now in verse 14, now those who say such things make it clear they're seeking a homeland. That's with God, right? And that's where we're going. We're seeking that homeland too. We want to be with the Lord forever and ever, right? Verse 15, if they were thinking about where they came from, they would have had an opportunity to return. But they now desire a better place, a heavenly one. Why would they want to come back to a place that was problematic, that had issues, that has sin, that has all these other things? Even though it's God's creation, why would we want to come back here since it is fallen? We want to go be with the Lord, right? Well, that's what he's saying here. They had an opportunity. They would have had an opportunity to return. That wasn't God's plan, and it wasn't their desire. But they now desire a better place, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them, a heavenly city, right? And that's where we all will be going, because remember, Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you, his children, may be also, right? And so that's where we're headed, there, because that's what we look forward to by faith, okay? Now, we look back to the cross, because that is the pivotal point in history that God had in place to be able to satisfy his promises to all people. Whether past or present, Jesus is that pivotal point. Jesus is God's demonstration of love, in that he sent his son to die for all humankind, for all sin, past, present, and future. That is real and true love. And that is where we go. And we desire that better place, where Jesus is, that heavenly place. And that's why he has gone and prepared that city for us. So, in verse 17, then he goes back to talking about Abraham, right? Now he talks about what we talked about. He says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. He received the promises, and yet he was offering this one and only son, the one to whom it had been said, your offspring will be traced through Isaac. He considered God to be able even to raise someone from the dead. Therefore, he received him back, figuratively speaking. So in other words, he knew that God had already said that Isaac was who was going to carry forth his lineage, that he was the promised one. He had made that clear in the Abrahamic covenant, okay? So in other words, it wasn't like if he sacrificed him, it would transfer over to Ishmael. No, that wasn't the plan. God's plan was solid. So that's why Abraham took him without questioning, because like he says, hey, if I have to go through with it, God who created mankind is able to, provide me my son back. Because it is part of God's promise. God can't go against his own promise. And I think that was the main thing about Abraham. He trusted God so much that even though he may not have intellectually understood it in his head, he accepted that whatever God told him to do, God would make sure that his plan, God's plan, would still stay on track no matter what, which meant that Isaac still had to be alive. And we see that that is exactly what happened. Isaac is still alive, but he didn't have to go through the ordeal of actually killing him, sacrificing him, and then God resurrecting him. But yet Abraham was ready for that eventuality, if that was the eventuality that was to come. So you see that? Now that is faith. To me, that is real faith. When you trust God to that extent, and you don't even question. Because look at that. When you go back and read Abraham, not once, even in that ordeal with Isaac, did Abraham ever say, "Are you sure, Lord? Isn't this the son of promise you gave? Are you sure you want to do that?" You know, like as if, you know, God didn't know what he was doing. Abraham just accepted it for face value. God, if you said it, roger that. I'm on my way. I'm taking Isaac with me. So, any questions about Abraham and Sarah and how this portion about how they were all looking forward to this heavenly city, this heavenly homeland? I mean, it doesn't say heavenly, but seeking a homeland is a heavenly place. Any questions on how they were looking forward to that? Well, one of the things you see in Job, by the way, although Job hasn't been brought up here, one of the things you see in Job is that one of the things he said was, "I know that my Redeemer lives." To me, that was a statement in Job that he knew that there was something to come and that whoever was going to redeem him was already alive even then. Yet there was faith that that Redeemer was still going to carry out the redemption for him. I mean, that's pretty strong faith when you have no scriptures, you know, in Job's time. There were no scriptures to give him any idea about a Redeemer. So he trusted God that God had a solution to the problems and the woes of this world. I thought that was pretty cool. So let's look at what it says then about Isaac. In verse 20, he says, "By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come." Remember, what he's talking about is the blessing. Okay, remember how there was that antagonistic issue of blessing and how Rebecca had her chosen one and Isaac had his chosen one, so to speak, and there was that antagonistic kind of thing. But yet, it says that Jacob and Esau were both blessed, and they were, right? Remember, Esau at the end finally came through and said, "Well, don't you have a blessing for me, even though you've given the main blessing off to Jacob?" Okay, but it says, by faith, Isaac blessed both of them concerning things to come, that God had a plan in the future. And yes, he did bless them both with a future blessing. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, and he worshiped leaning on the top of his staff. You can read that in Genesis 2. And he did. I mean, remember, Joseph had to kind of have him sit up because he was weak already when he had brought his two sons to be blessed by him. And by faith, Joseph, as he was nearing the end of his life, mentioned the exodus of the Israelites and gave instruction concerning his bones. In other words, Joseph understood that God's plan was bigger than just him going to Egypt to save many lives, as the Bible puts it. He knew that there was a bigger plan and purpose in the patriarchs, which was Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob, then Joseph was actually the chosen one, but yet we see that Judas is the one that really got the most prominence, wasn't it? Because that's where we see that the tribe of Judah was the big one. Not Judas, but Judah. And so was the one that got the most attention, the tribe of Judah. So when we look at that and we say, that's what Joseph said, "Take my bones with me." He knew that the God's plan and purpose and his covenant were going to be fulfilled in Israel, that in the land that had been given to Abraham by the covenant. And so that's why Joseph said, take my bones back there, because Egypt is not my place. My place is back in Canaan. So when God rescued the Jews out of Egypt, guess what? Did they carry Joseph's bones with them all the way through the wilderness? Yeah, they did. They carried Joseph's bones, man, a bag of bones, you know, all the way back until they got back into the land of Canaan, and which was the land of promise, the land of promise that was promised to Abraham and his descendants, you know, through the son of promise. So what we see then is that's why Joseph said, take my bones back with you, because that's where I've got to be buried. And so he wanted to be buried back there with them in that land where his fathers had been buried. And he was. What's that, Victor?
That's not the Joseph of Joseph's tomb where Jesus was buried. This was long before that.
That's Joseph of Arimathea.
This was long before that.
Oh, this is long before. Yeah, this was in the lineage of Abraham.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, totally a different Joseph at that point. Yeah. Thousands. Let's see. It would have been, David was 1100 BC. So it would have been around 1500 years before that. Yeah, 1500 years.
Just a snap.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. So, so what we see is that this was the big promise. Now, this brings us all the way up to God rescuing the Jews from the Egyptians, okay? Because now Joseph is not in control anymore. He's dead, and the Egyptians took advantage of the Jews and made them slaves. Well, now you say, well, that's for them to stay as slaves of the Egyptians. It doesn't follow what God had promised Abraham in his covenant with Abraham. So now you say, okay, well, what's going to happen? Well, God has to do something, right? If he's going to maintain his covenant, he's got to do something to get the Jews out of there and adhere to the promise he had made to Abraham, which is that that land of Canaan was going to be theirs. So in verse 23, he says, by faith, Moses, after he was born, was hidden by his parents for 3 months, because they saw that the child was beautiful and they didn't fear the king's edict. If you remember, in Exodus, it talks about that when Moses was born, the Pharaoh had put out an edict that because the Jews were starting to become way too numerous and he was afraid of the fact that they were going to revolt or something, he said all Jewish males are to be put to death, okay, as they're born. That none of them are to be left alive. Well, Moses, their parents hid him, as he says, for like 3 months. Well, the child started making a bunch of a ruckus, right? And so they were afraid that they were going to come in and find the boy and kill him. So instead, you remember the Bible story of making the little basket of reeds and made it waterproof and put the baby in it and went and put him in the Nile to try to hide him, so that when these people came around, you know, looking for children to off, they decided, okay, the child wouldn't be there. Well, you know the story. Miriam was down there watching the little, you know, the reed basket where the baby was, and what happened? The queen or the princess came down to take a bath and heard the baby crying, took up the basket, and lo and behold, there's a boy in it, and she adopted the boy. And so Miriam ran up and said, hey, you know, I know a Jewish woman who'd be able to, you know, help care for the child. Well, just happened to be his own mother. And so the princess said, yeah, that's acceptable. And so basically he was brought up by his own mother anyway. Isn't that God working out something?
Sure is.
And the boy was not killed. So God had a plan for Moses. Now, if that isn't a serious, you know, way for God to work it. So it says, by faith.
Do you think that,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Donna.
Do you think that the princess knew that that was Moses' real mother?
I don't think so. That's just me, but I don't think so. I think that was just God working it out.
Okay,
Because
I mean,
yeah,
I knew. Yeah, never mind.
I was going to say, how would Moses have been brought up if it had been with anybody else? He never would have known about God. He never would have known about, fundamentals of things in the Jewish community, in the Jewish realm.
And that he was actually a Hebrew and not a Egyptian. She somehow told him that, without
Exactly.
the princess knowing it, I guess.
Exactly.
Unless the princess told her. Unless the princess told him, just, I don't know. But he knew when he went to go kill that Egyptian soldier that was abusing the Hebrews. He knew that he was a Hebrew.
Right. And he
So
wanted to
somehow
help out the Hebrews.
Right. Yeah.
But they didn't see it that way. They said, "You're going to kill that guy. What? You're going to kill us too?" I mean, in other words, they still saw themselves as slaves, realizing, hey, if he'll kill Egyptian guard, man, he sure would off us without a second thought. They didn't see him as a savior. And so, of course, what happened to Moses? He beat feet fast. He knew he was in deep weeds. That the Pharaoh was going to kill him if he had heard, what had happened.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, so he got out of there.
What I think is so neat about that is that in every single situation, just when you think that there's absolutely no hope whatsoever, that's what this whole thing shows us.
Amen.
When we've given up, God might show us a dream,
Yep.
But that dream has to die. Like as a seed falls to the ground, it must die, like Jesus said. Our dream has to die, stinking in the grave, no resurrection of it at all. And then God can make it happen. That's what, that's.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, I think the writer of Hebrews did a really good job of bringing all this to the forefront, because I think people were accepting it more as a narrative, a story, than they were actually looking at it as God's mighty hand in control of everything all the way through this whole process. And that's why the writer of Hebrews has to recouch this so that they see that it wasn't just, circumstance or happenstance that it happened, but that God was totally in control, and that through these people that demonstrated faith and trust in God, God used them to his honor and glory to bring all this to fruition all the way up to the time of Jesus. And I think that's a beautiful picture, because otherwise, what do they think? They think like the Pharisees otherwise, thinking that it's about the fact that they just happened to be from Abraham's lineage. They would call him his father, and that to them was more important than the fact that they had a relationship with God. You know what I'm saying? And they'd miss out on it.
It goes to the fact of when we're sharing the gospel, we say it's not it's by faith, not works, lest any man should boast. Nobody's going to put their thumbs in their suspenders and go, I'm here in heaven because I ...
That's
and
right.
all of the people in this chapter here, I'm in this chapter here because I ...
Exactly. Yeah.
Nothing that we do it's all filthy rags,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I think the beauty of it is that, I mean, he only provides snippets because the Hebrews would have known the stories, okay? They would have been familiar with all of the events that actually transpired. But I don't think they understood the foundational structure of how each story came to be through God's mighty hand, but by the faith that the individuals displayed. And that's what the writer of Hebrews is trying to bring out, that, come on, people, you got to understand that each individual event happened not just because God wanted it to happen, but because God used the individuals through their faith to carry out his plan. And that's where he's going with this. So as we continue on, he says, we saw that, Moses was taken in.
Wait a minute, there was somebody else going to say something when I said something. I think somebody else was going to say something. I don't want them to feel like I cut him
Oh,
off.
I missed it. Yeah, I missed it. Who did somebody have something they wanted to add?
Sally or Sherry or somebody. I don't know. It seemed like there was somebody else trying to say something when I started talking, and sorry, whoever you are.
I was trying to hum fairy tales can come true.
Did you have anything, Sally?
It's either Sally or Sherry or somebody. I don't know. Somebody
No,
else.
Sherry's shaking her head. So.
Okay, well.
I can't get it to unmute, but it wasn't me. It was Victor.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Victor said.
All right.
Okay. Well, I see you're unmuted right now. Okay.
I am?
Yeah, I show you as unmuted. As a matter of fact, I hear you talking right now. And when you said, I am,
Mute me, because I can't figure out how to do it right now as I'm busy. Just mute me.
Okay, I'll mute you.
Thanks.
Okay. So as we see this, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. And that's what, Donna was alluding to, is that he was brought up as a Jew, but yet he was in the courts of the Pharaoh. Okay, who is the prince? I mean, he was adopted in, he was the prince. I mean, he's up there, okay? But yet, what you find is that even though he was there as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, he chose to suffer with the people of God rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasure of sin. And isn't that what sin is? It's about enjoying. One of the things that, even though Moses tried to do his own business in his own strength, that's why he killed that guard, and he thought he was already stepping out to do God's work for him, but it was kind of the same way as Sarah and Abram, where they ended up having Ishmael. They stepped out on their own strength, not under God's plan, and so they had that child out of the promise. Whereas now we see the same kind of thing. Moses wanted to help God along, but it wasn't God's timing yet, right? So, so even though Moses' heart was right, he took the wrong action. And hey, doesn't sin always have consequences? And we see, even though Moses was chosen by God to do this thing, hey, since he took it out on his own strength, he had to beat feet and leave and go, a long way away to be away from Pharaoh so that Pharaoh wouldn't kill him. And he was gone for what? He was gone for 40 years in the land of Midian. And he even got married while he was out there and had children. So we see that sometimes.
That's another example. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's another example of Moses. That his vision was dead and buried in the back desert. He was just herding sheep, and he thought he was done.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. So it's just another, like Joseph when he was in the prison, he thought, oh, that's it, I'm done. And every time you think you're okay, I'm done, that's it.
Right.
God's not going to do nothing else. I guess I must have been, I had a anchovy pizza dream instead of a real vision from God or whatever. And I didn't get it right. I must have gotten that wrong. Or like John the Baptist with, when his father went in to do the thing and the angel appeared, he's like, what? And he didn't believe him. So he had made him, where he couldn't talk,
Right.
So I don't know. Just to me, that's so neat the way God does that.
Yeah.
To prove that it can't be anything we did.
That's it. I mean, it's God's plan and purpose that will carry through. And I think that's the other thing that we learn through this whole study on faith is that God already has a plan and purpose in place. It's not our plan and purpose that matters. It's his that matters. All we have to do is join him in his plan and purpose. And we do that first by coming into relationship with and through Jesus Christ. And when we do that, we join him in his plan and purpose, and we become part and parcel of what's happening here in this story that we're studying today. Through faith, we continue on as one who is contributing to God's plan and purpose here on earth. And it's all by faith, right? So look at what he says. he chose to suffer with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So he understood God had a plan for him, for he considered reproach for the sake of Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, since he was looking ahead to the reward. And we see that Moses hung with the God's plan, you know, because when God finally got his attention at the burning bush, right? Remember that? Remember how remember how Moses was reluctant? Remember how he was making excuses to God as why he wasn't the right person? And you can sense God's frustration with him, you know, as Moses is saying, hey, my brother Aaron's a better speaker, or go get him, do this, you know, basically just leave me alone. God
That's
said,
another
no.
question I have.
What's that, Donna?
How did he know he had a brother Aaron if he was raised in the Catholics? His mom must have told him that too, I guess.
Well, no,
You know.
his mom nursed him. That means he
Right,
would
but
have
she
been
must have
living
told
with
him
his
that-
brother and sister, and his mother had told him that
Oh,
they were a family, but he couldn't tell anybody else.
Oh, okay. So the mother took him back to her home and nursed
Yes.
him. She didn't live in the castle and nurse him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's where I was thinking that she was there. Okay. Never mind.
Right. Right. So we see that, I mean, God has a plan for him, but now I think Moses, after tending sheep and everything, I think he's around 80 at this point. So think about it. He's up there in years. You know what? You don't want me, man. Come on. You know, I'm slow of speech and making all these excuses, right? Well, God didn't take any of his excuses. As a matter of fact, he said, basically, you're going. Okay. So get busy. You're going.
Pack your bags.
What's that, Victor?
Pack your bags.
Exactly. Well, it's kind of like, I don't know, to me, it's kind of like Abraham. You know how Abraham never asked questions? He just did it. Well, Moses, mostly. Okay. And how for nowhere we can. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question, Julie. What are you asking? Anyhow, for nowhere we can heard nothing. Well, I hope you're hearing us. I hope that doesn't mean you're not hearing us. Oh, I think they fell off. They're joining back in. Okay, let me see if they come back in here. Okay, did you get back in, Julie? Hey, Julie, Ivan, are you there? Okay, they're muted. Let me ask them to unmute. Well, I hope they're hearing us.
Here, now we could hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought you were saying you couldn't hear us. Okay. Well, I'm glad you hear us now. Okay, so we see that Moses ended up, you know, finally saying, okay, I'm going to do it. Remember, God gave him the ability, you know, gave him a staff, led him through a staff, it turned into a snake. And he gave him the power to do a lot of different things, right? And he let Aaron be his spokesperson, and they went to Pharaoh. And you remember the whole story of the 10 plagues, and finally the last plague was the death of the firstborn and the Passover. Remember, they had to, you know, kill a lamb, use its blood, and sprinkle the blood over the lintel of any of the homes where the Jews lived. If they didn't have that blood sprinkled over the lintel of their post, then the angel of death would kill the firstborn in that house. Okay? So we see that God had prepared everything to get the Jews out of Egypt. Moses was pivotal to that whole ordeal. And we see that as time passed, Moses fell more into the role. He started doing some more of the talking, and Aaron wasn't doing the talking anymore. We see that he feels more comfortable in it as time goes on. I think his faith started growing more, to be honest with you. And so what we see is that then, Moses led them into the wilderness. Remember, the people got went into the wilderness, but man, they started grumbling and complaining even after all the mighty works God had done. And so God called them a stiff-necked people. And Moses would get exasperated with them too and says, man, just take these people, just I don't want to do anything more with them, that kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of humorous in the way that went about. Okay, so let's see here. Let's move to, okay. Suffer people God rather than enjoy fleeting pleasures of sin, for he considered reproach for the sake of Christ to be greater wealth than the treacherous Egypt, since he was looking ahead to a reward, to the reward. So the reward is being with God, okay? Even though later we see that Moses had his issues, right? And he was not allowed to go into the promised land, he still went to go be with the Lord. But, God needed him to be there, needed to be somebody leading the people that were obeying God totally. And so we see in verse 27 that they left Egypt. By faith, he left Egypt behind, not being afraid of the king's anger, for Moses persevered as one who sees him who is invisible. So in other words, he did trust God. He finally left. He saw God's mighty works. He took the Jews out and led them away from the Egyptians. That was God's salvation. And the Passover was the ceremony then that was to be observed every year to remember God's wonderful salvation, right, to the Jews. It says, by faith he instituted the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch the Israelites. We talked about that, sprinkling the blood over the lintel. By faith they crossed the Red Sea as though they were on dry land. And when the Egyptians attempted to do so, they were drowned. Now, that's as far as we're going to get because we're already out of time. But what we're going to see is that next week, we're going to get to where now they're going to actually move in to Jericho, right? That was God's salvation at that point, was that they were going to go into Jericho, and God's going to show how he's going to do his mighty work through Joshua now that Moses is gone. Because from verse 29 to verse 30, we see that after the drowning of them, Moses dies before they cross the Jordan. So in other words, Moses led all the people throughout the whole wilderness, but he dies because God does not allow him to go into Canaan because he disobeyed God. Instead of speaking to the rock for it to bring water forth, he struck the rock. And what had happened is he let his emotions gain control over him because the people were basically making him mad. And so he got mad. He didn't do exactly what God said. And lo and behold, God told him, hey, go up to the top of this mountain. You'll see all the land that they will get, but you will not be able to put your foot in it. And then God took him, right? Now, he didn't take him like he took Enoch. I mean, he actually died. God said, it is basically your time to die. He was going to die. So God let him die. And then the issue was they went and tried to find his body, but God hid his body, basically, is what we're told. And that they never found Moses's body, even though they knew he had died up there. So then God passed the torch to Joshua. And Joshua then was the one who was to take the Israelites into the land of promise. And I'll tell you, all of these events, when you look at them that way, you see that God's hand was totally in each and every event. I mean, even today, we look at that and we realize there was no natural way that any of these events could have come to pass the way that they did. There was clearly supernatural intervention in every event. And the issue was, what we see is that God used people then just as much as he does today. The question is, do we let him? Or do we get antagonistic? Or do we say, well, not us, Lord, use somebody else? So, I mean, that's what we're called to do. We're called to follow him. And in that, we bring him honor and glory as we follow him. And our faith reflects that we trust him and that we obey him. So any questions, comments, additions, subtractions, disagreements about what we've talked about today? We'll pick up in verse 30 next week, and we'll talk about, then we'll see where the picture goes on from there, because when they cross over into the land, it's not too much longer after that that the judges come about, and after that that the kings come about, right? And then we see that the kings last for a period of time, but not forever and ever, right? Because when Jesus was there, did they have a Jewish king at that point?
No.
No, they didn't. Yep, they did not have a Jewish king. So the Jewish kings obviously stopped at the end, pretty close to the end of the Old Testament when they went into exile into Babylon. We don't see that they ever had a king after that, do we?
Nope.
Nope, that was it. That's all she wrote at that point.
The lineage still went on, but it doesn't show the history or whatever of those, you know, once, what was it, what was the name? I can't remember the name of the king that was the puppet king when Nimrod came in and took over the...
Not Nimrod, Nebuchadnezzar you're talking about. Yeah. Well, he appointed other kings, but they become more like governors, I think, than they really were kings. Man, I don't know. I'd have to go back into 2 Kings to look at that, because that's about where the kings happen. They go all the way to the end in 2 Kings, and see who the last one was, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Jehoiakim, was it?
Jehoiakim? It could have been. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm thinking, isn't he the one who they murdered his sons and then put his eyes out? That was the last thing he got to see, was his sons being murdered.
I'd have to go back and look before I start saying yes, because otherwise Margaret's going to straighten me out here in a minute.
Straighten me out, Margaret. If I got it wrong, I'm...
2 Kings.
It was King David.
Oh, but no, he was the second king. No, she's talking about at the very end. Let's see, is there a 15? Judah's king Azariah. Let me see here.
Talks about Rahab.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay, there's Chronicles. Jehoiachin was the last.
Okay.
Jehoiachin. I think that was Jehoiakim, and he was renamed Jehoiachin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 37th year of the exile, Jehoiachin and the evil Merodach became king of Babylon. He pardoned King Jehoiachin. No, so his kids were not, this wasn't the one where his kids were killed in front of him. Because this is the one at the very end that evil Merodach actually had him sit and dine with him at his table. So he was actually blessed, even though he wasn't the best guy out there. You know what I mean?
No, he was a sellout.
Yeah, he was a sellout. And then Gedaliah was made governor before him in the land of Judah. So yeah, we see that, you know, but that's the end of it. At that point, there were no more kings. We don't see any more kings come to bear in the Jewish realm. They get ruled by others. And that was because of their sinfulness. They were disobeying God. That was part of the punishment. So the next one in the lineage of David became permanent. And who was that?
Solomon.
Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
Because remember, Jesus was of the lineage of King David, and he would sit on the throne forever and ever. So Jesus is their king. Do they accept that?
No.
Not so much.
Not at all.
So, yeah. So anyway, like I said, any other questions, comments, contributions, questions? But we'll pick up there, we'll pick up in verse 30 next week. Okay. Sounds good. Any prayer requests, folks?
Ivan and me, we did a pulmonary function test because the pulmonary embolus that Ivan had, plus my pulmonary function is being 40%.
Okay.
We need, we're gonna get the results next week. And
Okay.
a CT scan came out that Ivan got 2 more nodules, so we're just waiting to see if what their plan is gonna be due to the cancer and everything going on with COVID-19. So.
Oh man, yeah, you're right. Okay, so you had your test done though, right? From last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yesterday, actually, by the fact.
Okay, okay.
And I'm in a lot of pain. That's why I had to cut last week.
No, I understand. I understand. No need for apologies on that. Okay, yeah, I've had pulmonary embolisms myself, and they had to put me on like blood thinners and stuff.
I
Yeah.
did too. 10 days in the hospital.
Yeah, not good, not good.
They had him in Eliquis, but he wasn't. They're not sure. They think the chemo was the one that caused it, but they're not.
That makes sense.
But they're not really sure about it. So we'll see next week. To see. Thank
we'll
you.
be praying. We'll be praying for that. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. For both of you. Absolutely. And how's your son doing?
My son, we're hoping God that he be able to see his daughter, but
Okay.
the mother is giving him a lot of problems. That he have the right per cord that the same to be able to see her, but she's giving her problems.
Yeah.
So we're hoping God, it's not being easier for him.
No, I understand. I understand. Okay, we'll pray about that too. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So I got a couple things.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
Alyssa went to a cardiologist yesterday, and she's being checked for POTS, which is basically when you stand up, your heart rate decreases or increases and your blood pressure decreases.
Huh.
So I don't know if you remember, but we do the singing Christmas trees, and there's been plenty of times where she's almost passed out and fainted in the trees.
Oh my!
And it's all relative to this standing, in there, and it's hot. But she's going next Friday for the stress test on the treadmill, and then in September she's going to have an echo, and she's going to wear a Holter heart monitor thing for 2 days to check everything out, and she'll just have to take beta blockers if everything shows up that but the doctor thinks that's what she has.
Okay.
I kind of diagnosed her myself. So
yeah,
she
Dr.
has the
Sherry.
symptoms of it. She has the symptoms. So I'm like, that's what it is, and sure enough. But so next weekend is my birthday. Next Sunday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. I was very upset. I thought Pastor David was back because I watched the live stream of the beautiful baptisms outside, and I thought he was back. But then Alyssa told me that he's not preaching until September 13th. Because I was going to get my butt up next weekend and go to church on Sunday, and I never go because I don't do mornings.
Right.
So I was going to go for my birthday because I thought Pastor David would be there, but so that's disappointing.
Oh, man.
But the thing I need prayers for is I've been having dreams, and I don't know if they're relative to medications that I take, every day, but it's happened. One happened this past week, and then another one was like several months ago. But so my mom has passed away since 2007, and I had a good friend that died of lung cancer within a month in 2005. So in my dreams, they're two separate dreams. I was with both of them, and they were alive in my dream, but I witnessed them dying in my dream. And I wasn't with them, because they were in St. Louis. I wasn't with them when they actually died for real. But it's just so traumatic. I wake up so exhausted because it's like a nightmare, because I have to experience the grief twice, It was my mom and my friend that died a second time in my dream, but I was there this time. So it's like, I don't know what's causing these dreams, but I just don't want this because it's too exhausting, you know. So I just need better dreams. I pray every night that, you know, I have pleasant dreams, but these are still coming out, you know, these bad things. So
I hear you. Yeah, those can be unsettling, can't they?
yeah, they're exhausting too.
Yeah.
You don't rest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll pray about that. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for an opportunity to come together and study your word and to reflect on the wonders that you've done throughout the ages. Man, Lord, it's amazing that people can so quickly dismiss all the things that you've done. And it's also amazing to me how the Jews could dismiss the wonders you did even within a matter of days or weeks from the time that you had done them. I don't know, Lord, what's the matter with us as humans where we can be so untrusting when you do such wonderful and mighty things? And yet, look at us today. We can even trust and uphold you for the wonders that you've done all the way back then. And we can see your mighty hand in all of it. Help us in our faith, Lord, and help any unbelief that we may have to break us free from it so that we would trust you in and through all things and love you just the way that, you know, you have called us to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Now, Lord, I pray that you would go with each and every one of us and, you know, just give us peace in all that we do. And let us follow you and join you in the work that you're doing, that we may become part of this narrative, just like the writer of Hebrews has been writing here about faith. And as we become contributors to the narrative until your return, Lord Jesus. That is so awesome. Now, Lord, I pray to you for Ivan and Julie, Lord. I just put them before your throne. I pray, Lord, especially for Ivan as he's dealing with this matter of the pulmonary embolism and what's going on there. Lord, I pray that you would give insight and wisdom to the doctors and skill about what the right steps would be, you know, to be able to mitigate, to take care of this problem. And Lord, we ask that you put your healing hand on him above all, because only through you can there be any kind of resolution to this. So we're looking to you, Lord, because I think in these types of situations, the doctors don't have all the answers, but you do, Lord. And so we look to you, that you would put your hand on Ivan and that this matter can get resolved, I pray, so that both he and both Ivan and Julie are not in any of these pains that they're having to deal with, Lord, but that you would free them from those pains, I pray. I also pray for their son, that you know the situation, and you know this isn't a perfect world, and sin is ever before us. But Lord, I ask that you open the heart of, you know, his ex-wife, and that, you know, she would just stop being problematic and I guess a burden to this process of him being able to visit his child. Lord, please open her heart and let him be able to come and visit the child. You know that it is the right thing. And really the child needs both parents. And, you know, even though there's a divorce in play, they still need both parents, Lord. And it would be the best thing for the child. So please, Lord, work that out, I pray. I also pray for Sherry, Lord, that you would be with her in these dreams that she's having. Lord, I just pray that you give her peaceful sleep and that these dreams would go away. I don't know if it's her medication or maybe something else that she's taking that might be causing them. You know, Lord. We ask that you, Lord, just, you know, give her peaceful sleep. Be the peace that surpasses understanding for her, especially when she goes to bed, so that these dreams would go away, Lord. They just, you know, unless you have some specific message, reveal it to her so that these dreams will go away, Lord, because, I mean, otherwise they're not helpful. in the sense that she's not able to get good sleep and good rest. So we look to you for that, Lord, because you're in control. I also pray for Alyssa, Lord, as she's coming up with this cardiology exam and the issues that she's dealing with. Lord, that you would be with her as she goes through a stress test and then subsequently for the echo process that she has to go through, where she has to carry around that those devices on her chest to monitor her, her heart. But Lord, I pray for your healing hand on her too, that you would just resolve this matter so that she won't be having a problem with, heart rate and blood pressure being disconnected and in a way that causes her to get lightheaded and potentially can, pass out. Restore her strength to her, Lord, and let her heart and blood pressure be proper in the way it's supposed to be. Now, Lord, I also pray for our president and our leaders, whether they be in federal, state, or local level, and that you would just give them the insight and the wisdom to rule properly and to make the proper decisions for this nation, Lord. But I pray that you would just give them the wisdom and that they would hear it, that they would listen to it and put it into practice, because, you're the one who knows best, Lord, and we need you in every way. So, Lord, we look to you. Also pray, even though the coronavirus has not been getting as much, press these days, it still is problematic out there, and we still need a solution for it, Lord, whether it be through vaccine or remedy. We look to you, Lord. We need your direction and guidance and protection of those people who are really working on a solution so that this problem can be mitigated. But mainly we look to you and ask for your direction, your guidance, and your resolution of the issue, Lord, because you still are in control, and we love you and we know you want what is best. So we continue to look to you in all of this. We pray for all of our families, Lord, collectively, that you would just give us, each and every one of us, a position in our families to where they can see you through us, and that we would be a witness to them in a loving, caring way, and that we would lift, you would lift them up, that at some point they would receive you if they don't know you yet, or that they would come closer to you if they've kind of drifted away. So, Lord, we look to you and we trust you in and through all this, because you are God and you are our God, and we love you. We praise you now as we go and love you and ask that you be with us in all things. We love and praise you and give you all the honor and the glory in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
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 All right, everybody.
Thank you, Ted.
Hey, my pleasure. Praise the Lord.
Another wonderful learning session. Thank you very much.
Amen, Aaron. God bless you, my brother. You take care.
Thank you, Ted. You too.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yep, good night. Good night, Bobby, Corey, and also Misty. God bless you. Take care.
Good night, Ted.
Yeah, thank you, Misty. God bless. Bye-bye. Thank you, Julie and Ivan. God bless you. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you.
You got it. Amen.
Hey, Ted, I had a lunch date this past Monday.
Oh, how'd it go?
Well, it's someone I know from my past. I used to work with them.
Oh, okay.
But I'm a little conflicted because, well, he's a pastor.
Oh, my.
That's not why I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted because he, I don't know if he's married or not. And I believe that he was divorced, but he sent me a worship video a couple nights ago, and he was worshiping, of course. A woman was singing, and I noticed a ring on his left finger, like a wedding band type ring. So I don't know if he's just doing that as a deterrent, because a lot of women, chase after single pastors, just so nobody bothers him, or if he's actually still married. So my best friend, the 7-Day Adventist, she says I really need to question him about it.
Yeah, it
because
doesn't hurt to ask.
because I shouldn't be like going to lunch or something with a married man if he is in fact married.
Yeah,
you know?
Indeed. No, that makes sense.
So I don't know what to think. I told her I would just wait and see if he wants to go out again or, get together again, and then I'll ask him. But I don't know. Maybe that was just a one-time lunch thing and it's not going to happen again.
Right.
So,
but if
I
it
really
does,
enjoyed it though.
But if it does, hey, and there's nothing to say, you can't have a lunch with them or something like that. That's fine. But if he is, I mean, a lot of times people will keep the ring on, not just for, to try to keep, stray flies away, but to actually, it's their memory.
Good night, Ted.
Hey, good night, Margaret. God bless you,
Hi,
my
Margaret.
sister. Yeah, and I'll see you Wednesday. Yeah, it's the way that they keep their, memories of what they had and that kind of thing sometimes, or something like that. But it's hard to say. You like your friend said, hey, ask them, before it gets into anything that's inappropriate.
Yeah, because I told my my best friend, I'm like, I need to know this because
Yeah, there's a discussion on that.
As a Christian woman, I cannot get involved with a married man, and I don't want to develop any feelings for him if he is in fact married.
Exactly.
So it's not appropriate for